Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of League of Inches podcast. We're doing another team season review. They've been going really, really well. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Really appreciate the numbers so far that we have been pulling on both the YouTube and the podcast side of things and getting involved with all the posts and that we've been doing about that. And again, thanks to all the creators so far that have jumped on, had a good chat about their teams, and for all the other League of Inches boys that have come on as well. So we're probably we're over halfway now. We're into the Sydney Roosters now. So got royalty with me tonight, and I'm so keen to have this. And obviously, part of that is the Supercoach royalty, which is Jesse. And Jesse, it's just not the same anymore after I've said it too many times. But welcome aboard, mate. Ready to talk about your beloved Roosters?
Yeah, mate. Always, of course. Keen for this,
mate. And when I say royalty, we've got them in. So we've got Tom from Retro Rugba Leeg. Mate, welcome aboard. I'm so keen to have a chat to you. It's so good to have you on. I really do appreciate you jumping on. I know you got such a crazy schedule, and we're doing this Halloween night, which you're obviously out and about. So I really appreciate you jumping on.
No, not a problem. It's been good. You're right. We really are the calm before the storm. Literally, with every jersey in the world seemingly going to drop very soon. I, unfortunately, unlike Jesse, don't have trophies posted.
Oh.
Had I known that we were to bring trophies, I might have done it. But
they just live there.
Royal amongst us.
That's his
show him off to Joel.
Stuff. Yeah, that's our first year where we've done some trophies giveaway stuff at the end of the year for a few Supercoach things, and unfortunately Jesse got 2 of those awards, so it was kept in-house, which I would have liked to have spread him out, but unfortunately he was the one that got him. Just quickly, obviously most people, I believe, hopefully they haven't been living under a rock, know about your account, but just have a bit of a chat, bit of a spiel about your account, what you do there, and where people can find you.
That's me.
Yes,
sorry.
Sorry.
That's bad stats. So Retro Rugba Leeg. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and they're the main 2 that I'm operating on. Facebook's there, I think, there as well. My whole thing is twofold. One is looking at like kind of the new designs when they come out. So when clubs release new jerseys, like they're about to drop a bunch tomorrow, or telling the stories behind jerseys. So for example, when a club launches an Anzac Day jersey, okay, what does that design mean? How does that take us back to the Anzacs or the history or anything like that? So that's one facet of the things I do. And then also I buy, sell, and trade jerseys and stuff as well. So I've got a rack of stuff behind me that'll be up for sale soon. I've got a whole box of stuff over there to be unpacked pretty soon. So stocking up ready for the new year to get people hopefully fitted out in some of their Holy Grail jerseys and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my angle.
Mate, it's great to see. I've been watching the page and incredible growth for yourself as well. So you've been doing a really, really good job. Awesome page. If you haven't already, please go ahead, give Retro Rugby Leeg some love. Tom definitely deserves it. But here we are to talk about the Sydney Roosters season. Obviously quite a successful one. Obviously fell just short, which would have been a bit disappointing on face value, but we'll unpack a little bit of the reasons behind that. Obviously losing some of those key personnel towards the back end of the year did not help that at all. For me personally, I had them at the start of the year as my premiership favourite, so I thought the Roosters were going to go all the way. I'm interested to know, first of all, where you boys both had your teams. Tom, I'll let you start first. Where did you, at the start of the season, sort of think your Roosters were going to finish?
I had them in the grand final. I had them playing Brisbane, actually, was my tip. I thought Brisbane were just going to go strength to strength. I thought Penrith were going to fall off, losing more players. And I thought this was the Roosters' one last ride window. Neither of those things happened.
Yes, no, I had the Broncos starting a dynasty last year, and then that's quickly faded. Jesse, I believe, if my memory serves me correct, which it hardly ever does, you had the Roosters win the comp as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I was very much the same thing for yourself, Tom. I really thought it was going to be the last hurrah for a lot of these boys, and I thought they were really going to put it on. And you know what? It went for, and I was talking to Joel just before we started this too. I felt the Roosters started really well, and then he enlightened me that they lost 3 games at the beginning and out of the 7. So I was like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe not as much, but they went hard. I thought, here we go. We could be on for it. Hit some strides, and I did have them winning, and unfortunately, sort of fell off a bit. But I always had in the back of my mind Penrith. I think it's very hard to kind of rule them out. But I was very hopeful. I thought, Roosters can get up for this one, for this season just gone. And obviously, I think in looking at it now, finishing third, Man, they did good. I think first and second was pretty well nailed in and locked down. Like no one was getting past Melbourne for winning the minor, and then Penrith obviously inevitable. I think for where the Roosters actually finished, I think it was about as fair as it could have been for the season they had.
Yeah. It's funny when you mentioned that. I think their first 7 games, it was a 3-4 record. And we were sort of speaking a little bit off air about it and said it felt like the Roosters had started quite a lot better than previous years where they've been notorious slow starters. It actually felt like they sort of hit the ground running in a way. And obviously the Vegas game, very up for that game and did play a really good brand of football. Thinking about obviously a huge occasion. Would have been great on the grand stage to get that win up. It felt like there was a lot of pressure at the start, and there was a lot of talk in the lead up to that to the season kicking off about the Roosters needing to start a bit quicker because the year before maybe missing out on a couple of wins that they probably should have or could have had and would have helped them go a bit further up on the ladder. Looking back on it now, it felt like the Roosters definitely had a bit more emphasis on their start to this season, Tom.
Yeah, and that seemed to be something that Trent Robinson came out early on and addressed, and they said they were going to change their style. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that change was. Like, it wasn't as night and day evident. And like you said, in their early performances, it really just kind of went win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. I mean, they came out and had that really good win against the Broncos in Vegas, and they kind of came out fast and attacking. But then there are other times where that old style Bondi Wall defense went missing. So it wasn't really easy just to put your finger on and say, this is the new style. Like the Bulldogs this year, you could say there is a new defensive style with the Dogs. I found it harder to pick. Now, I'm less that kind of stats guy. Jesse, you might be able to pick it apart and say, yep, there was a real change. I don't know. But on vibe and vibe alone, I couldn't see it. But they certainly felt it. They addressed it. And things seem to go on an upward trajectory throughout the season.
I think there was a lot of emphasis around Tedesco in the preseason and kind of the season that he come off. Was he finished? Was like a lot of questions that was getting asked, and obviously he did a lot of. I think it was a lot of sprint training, a lot of speed coaching and stuff to try and regain some of that leg speed again. And just he'd been concussed a few times, and he was just starting to age, and there's all these excuses around it. And I think the most notable change was he tried to. I always felt Tedesco tried to do too much, especially in that 23 season. And it really hindered the team and it hindered himself and it made him look worse than what he was actually doing. And I think the thing that changed a lot starting at the beginning of the year was the game kind of opened up for the team. You saw Sam Walker doing a lot more for him. And it was always tricky trying to get that complementing 5'8" with him. And I think Sandon Smith and Sam Walker were perfect together more than Kiri ever was. And I think when they sort of worked out that dynamic, obviously Crichton really helped on that side too, on the left. And the team just sort of gelled a bit more. And Tedesco didn't overplay his hand. And it really benefited everyone. And I think that's kind of more so where the early start was better for them. Then it was just like, oh, let's just rely on Teddy to do it all and, burn himself out and then kind of fall off a bit. So, but you're right, man. I really it wasn't as daylight as like the Dogs, for example. There wasn't just an entire switch, but you're not really going to have that. Like the team had been there forever. And if anything, there was more players than they had in the past to really rotate through. Robinson hadn't changed. The game plan was very much the same, but I think they kind of just dispersed the load a bit better overall.
The one thing I would say that I did notice some change in, and remember last year there was talk about Sam Walker being unhappy because he was being overcoached by Cooper Cronk, and he did seem to get the reins taken off him a little bit more this year.
Yeah.
And there was just moments where no one really knew what was going on, but Sam knew. It was like Munster-esque. No one else knew what was happening. So that was obviously worked into the system a bit more, but you need all the other pieces working around you to do that. And Angus Crichton had one of the years, and then Lindsay Collins and other guys like that around him makes your job a hell of a lot easier.
100%.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. One game early on that sticks out to me that sort of felt like, as you've mentioned, sort of Tom, it was that win-loss sort of back and forth to start the year after having a real emphasis on starting the year well. And look, from a Roosters point of view, they're normally none and 5 or something for early on. So that it definitely was an improvement in a way. But that Anzac game, that blow the Dragons out of the water, 60 points to 18. For mine, looking back on, that was really the moment where it felt like the Roosters came out and said, all right, we're here for this competition and we're one of the real heavyweights in this game and in this competition. It was, thinking back on it, it was one of those games where from literally like the kickoff, the Roosters were just 4 or 5 levels above the Dragons, who, to be fair, we're coming in with quite good form into that game. And a lot of people were like, this is going to be an Anzac classic. And the Roosters just had another idea. Jesse, talk to us about that game. And if for you, like myself, it felt like that sort of moment where the club really stood up and went, all right, we're in this year.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. That was a massive game. They blew them out of the water, and it was like from the get-go too. They didn't work into that as, try and build up a bit of dominance. It's like they started like they'd already just played 20 minutes and the Dragons hadn't turned up. So I feel like you kind of need those games to really set yourself on a good path for the season, and it did, especially for Sam Walker. And you can look at the entire attack really, because they were all humming and the entire team was flying that game. But and I think it helps. You get Dom Young in there too. You got Tupou killing it on the other side. Everywhere that you looked, they had an angle, they had an avenue for something. And if the Dragons tried to counter it, which they obviously didn't do a very good job of it overall, they just went somewhere else and they just couldn't answer it either. And I think that variety really, well, you can go into the next game and go, okay, cool. We knew these combinations and things are starting to really line up here. And you take that into the next game and the next game and the next game. Like you get the top dogs do, like Penrith do it all the time. They'll go one way and they're like, sweet, this isn't working. We've got the option and we've got the talent to go the other side and we can do it. And I think that game really sort of showcased how much they did that. And the Roosters continue to do that for the rest of the season too. And they did it quite often where it's like, why, and for Supercoach particularly, because I used to go, please go the other way. Please. I know you can do it this side, but please go the other way. I've got players on that side. But that's a great problem to have. You know what I mean? Like you've just got options. And yeah, I feel like they sort of haven't had that. They've been pretty one-dimensional in certain games in the past. And yeah, it was just, I love getting one on the Anzac Day specials, especially against my mate too. So it's always fun.
Was that the one for you, Tom, that stood out?
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting looking at that game. So we talk about the Roosters blowing them off the park. It was actually the Dragons who scored first. Jaden Sewell went over in the first 5 minutes. And so in the first 16 minutes, it was 1 try to 2. So Dom Young and Angus Crichton scored for the Roosters. So it would have been around about, 10-4, 12-4, something like that. And I think I remember it was at that point that I mustn't have watched it. I must have been out and about. So I just checked it on my phone. I looked at the score and I thought, oh, no, this could be one of those ones for the ages. And then it's just Roosters' names from here on out. But what you're saying is exactly right, Jesse. When you look at that try scorer list, they're all over the place. It's forwards, it's halfbacks, it's Nat Butcher's in there, Joey Manu's on one side, Suoli'i scoring as well. It's just tries all over the park. And I thought, and I still think, for the 2024 season, the Roosters had the most stacked squad on paper. And even like just if you're going to play the game, you match the numbers up from 1 to 17 each week and you give points, head to head, the Roosters basically win that every week. But they just
100%.
never unlocked it. And they just didn't have that old Bondi Wall system that Penrith, they just click themselves into gear and away they go. So yes, that was a moment. I think the moment that made me go, the wheels are maybe not as tight as I thought, was Magic Round. And I blame myself for that because I'm cursed. Every time I watch the Roosters play live, they lose. Except for this year, I went and saw them play the Gold Coast, and I've broken the curse. So now they're finally relinquished themselves with that. But that was one of those games, watching them play, at Suncorp setting, it's at the Sharks. You should win that slam dunk. And I thought, here we go. This is what Roosters do. And that, for me, was probably the telltale sign. That was what our year looked like in the end.
That was an odd game as well because you came in with very, very good attacking form for that game as well. I remember because looking at it, it was a 60-point game you scored against the Dragons, 40 against the Broncos, and then 38 against the Warriors as well. So you came and you still scored 30 points, but the problem was obviously defense, and you let in 38 for the Sharkies, who were on a run that time. So that was big in itself. I guess early on, there was obviously not a great moment for the club, and that involved Spencer Leniu at Vegas. Obviously, got that lengthy suspension for what we know now was that racial slur towards Ezra Mam. New signing at the club. I'm guessing early thoughts were oh no, this does not look great. And all this hype about how good Spencer would have been for that pack and that club, it wasn't a great way to start off, Tom.
It wasn't. Did that really change the course of the year? I'm probably not convinced it did. I rather have him on the field? Absolutely. And I felt he was probably a little bit starved of minutes at times, both the Roosters and in State of Origin. I just love it when he goes crazy. And I think he is the perfect Jared 2.0 replacement. There seems to be, I wonder if this will go down in rugby league folklore, that there's another side to that story that never got told. And it was interesting that Spencer Leniu kind of believed in the stance that what happens on the field stays on the field. And he's stuck by that. But it'd be very interesting to know what happened in those leading up moments, and we'll just never know. But that's the bit that kind of sits in the grey wash. But I still like Spencer. Yeah, he did what he did, and he's definitely in the wrong for it, and he copped his punishment. And hopefully he'll have a big 2025.
I hope we get a book one day of just rugby league folklore stories and get behind the scenes of some of these sorts of things that are out there. There's so many rumors around it. It'd be awesome just to one day to have a book where you can just open it, read 300 odd pages of just all these stories and just clarifying what actually happened. Jesse, your thoughts around that early incident, obviously revolving Spencer Leniu?
We spoke about this not long after it happened, and I was so disappointed, man. I was really annoyed about it because I thought, like, there's all this hype. I was really excited to see him there, and he hasn't done anything yet except this. This is it. He's come out and he's just done something so unlike the Roosters to do straight off the jump. And it's like, man, come on, like, look where you are now. Like, obviously you come from Penrith, premiership winning, and killed it and everything. But I'm like, you got this opportunity. You've been handed this really, really good chance to, it's the Roosters, bloody hell. Like, you look at the history of the club, and then you just come out straight off the jump and just do this. And I'm like, God, that's frustrating. And like, you can kind of give Ria Hargraves a bit of wiggle, with the amount of times he's been suspended because of what he's done in the past for the club. Like, he's been a veteran, and you just go, oh, it's just, it's what he does, and you can kind of get around it. And it's like, okay, it might not be ideal, but he's got stuff to back himself. But I was like, just really, like, why are you doing this right now? But again, he copped his punishment. He came back really strong, had an exceptional Origin. Obviously, his minutes are quite limited, but my God, did he make the most of the 20 minutes that he played here and there? And then when he started, he was killing it. So I'm very excited to see him start next year. I think he's going to absolutely destroy everyone. That forward pack's going to be wild.
His best,
but yeah, big fan.
His best moment of the year was that second game, I think it was, against St. George. Remember, they kicked it to him like twice in a row off the kickoff, and he just went wild. And the crowd was baying for it. When it went the other way, they all booed. What a moment!
Yeah.
Like, that was some real rugby league stuff there.
Yeah, it's just get it to him and let him have that hit up that he deserves. Yeah.
And then I think they wanted the third one, and they didn't end up going, and they got a big boo. The whole crowd was like, boo, like, so they got into it. So
it's only human.
Yeah, it was built up perfectly, and he was keen as for it as well. You could tell by his reaction; he wanted that third installment of it. Just did not, because I think that second lot you guys scored like that set or something. It was like one of those remarkable sets where you just went the length of the field off it, and away it goes. And he was like, "Yeah, let's go again." The Dragons thought, "Oh, that didn't work last time. Let's not go that way." So quite funny. Obviously, we fast forward all the way through the Origin period. You started getting on a bit of a winning run, and I think you only lost like 2 or 3 towards the back end of the year. It really looked like that sort of juggernaut, that star-studded sort of team really starting to build at the right time of year. And for an opposition fan, it looked very scary. From a prediction fan saying the Roosters win the comp, starting to sort of pump my fists together and go, all right, here we go. Had a little bit of sneaky side little bet there for the Roosters. So I was loving my little chances there. Obviously, then we see, I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me, was it round 24 that Sam Walker went down? Was against the Eels that wet night?
That is against the Eels. I can't recall if that was the day, but they played the Eels that night.
It's around 24, the Eels. He still went ahead and won the game, but it was obviously change. It was a huge change for the season. And looking back on it, probably was the moment where it meant that the competition was slipping out of reach for the Roosters, unfortunately, because, and we will talk about some of these individual players, but Sam Walker had a remarkable year. He really, in my opinion, stood up to become one of the top sort of 5 halfbacks in the game. He may have hit the wrong button there, but that's all right. He'll be back. So yeah, I just feel like, in my opinion, it's sort of definitely the moment. I think the same game, that was when Brandon Smith got injured as well. So that was towards the back end. It was just a game that was an easy win, basically, because Parramatta were down and out, turned into a horrible, horrible 80 minutes.
Yeah, well, losing Sam Walker. I suppose when that happened, I was just like, well, we're done. That's a shame. You know what I mean? They were flying up until that happened, and then look, like a round or two later, they lost to the Raiders at home too. You know what I mean? And like, I'd have to think it probably wouldn't have happened had Sam Walker been there for it. But you can't really. Who's to know? The Raiders, they put it on that game. It was horrible for us, but super low scoring. But yeah, it's just you can't replace your halfback easily. Like you'd know, obviously with Moses, like it's a very hard spot to replace, especially with the form and the kind of game that the Roosters were really playing. And like it was almost they gave Walker the keys. They said, do your thing, man. Eyes up. Do your little chips over the top. Like you've got talent there. You've got Marnie. You've got Young, and they'll put it there, and then you can just go left if you want to go Crichton or Tupou. Like they're doing the job, and I think, yeah, losing that, it just. I had no. I honestly, personally, I had no hope after that happened. I thought when Walker went down, I thought, well, we'll see you next year. Unfortunately, quite late too, because it happened. The injury, like it's such a big injury. There was an ACL rupture because he had the rupture earlier in the season. Was it early? No, must have been last season when he got dropped. I think
He had
he
a
got
knock to
injured.
it. There was
He
there was
had a
some
knock.
sort of little
Yeah,
injury to it.
yeah, and then like do that stuff. Don't do it at all. Ideally, if you can, you can't avoid that sort of thing. But God, don't do it at the end of the season. Like we're going to lose you for most of the next year too. It's just rubbish. But yeah, if they can lock him down long term, and it's obviously the contract's there for him, so I think they'll do a good thing having him. But yeah, it's gonna be a pretty rough transition going into the beginning of next season with the departures and not having him at the same time. So just have to see what happens. But I think yeah, that time of the year when they were humming, to lose him, and like Brandon Smith too, like he was doing pretty well as well at that point. But yeah, at that stage, you kind of just have to close the book, unfortunately.
It was a horrible game. I know it was a win, Tom, but that obviously losing Sam Walker, Brandon Smith, and throw in Victor Radley, who obviously then did play in the end, but he was obviously half the player what he could have been, with just obviously naturally that shoulder injury was horrible. It wasn't, yeah, it was just must have been a huge punch in the guts for you guys.
Yeah, when Sam Walker went down, I thought, oh, this is going to be really tough, but we've probably still got it in us. I mean, the thing with Sam Walker is he's just your X factor. So when you get into the arm wrestle, he's the kind of guy that can break you out of it.
Yeah.
And you saw that, like when they played against Melbourne in the finals, and they got up to 8-0 start. Okay, and I understand that, of course, that was with the send off, but it was a sin bin. But they're those kind of arm wrestle moments where you're in it, and you let your forwards just hang in, and you let someone like him top it off. You didn't have that. And then when Brandon Smith went down on top, that's when I probably internally went, I don't know if we can do this. So yes, that was that. And I think that was a real shame for Brandon Smith as well, because he'd been kind of copping it throughout the start of the year. Didn't have the best kind of first year to the club last year. There was some kind of off-field stuff going on for him as well. And now it seemed like he'd finally turned it around, and the boys were, loving him. Everything was going great. He'd be loving being part of the Roosters and in Bondi. And then that all just kind of fell to pieces for him. The other thing you mentioned about Victor Radley as well, that injury came at a really bad time, not only for where we're at in the season, but in this game style that he'd been shifted to, both playing in edge and when he was through the middle, it was just old school straight through the middle. He wasn't doing the Isaiah Yo out the back of stuff. And so that meant he had to do what he was doing worse with that busted shoulder. And you saw that, I think, in that game against Manly, and also the following week against Melbourne. Like, he'd take those tough carries and he'd just wince. And he'd do it again, but the power was just getting sucked out of him like a battery. So that all those little things, Joey Manu probably never clicked into that sixth gear that we would have liked to seen. I still believe that Suaalii was a better winger, because then you just have him just running in from the backfield. All these little things that just never quite clicked, that saw us go to a prelim, and that was probably as good as we're ever going to get.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we talk about the finals football side of things, and we'll go through the record quickly. Obviously, the first week was a loss to Penrith, 30 points to 10 in Penrith. The semi-final absolutely put the cleaners through. Manly, 40 points to 16. And that started to make people think, well, hang on a second. Could there be that little something special? Had they got that last little bit of wind where I think it was, I remember they get Sandon Smith actually had a blinder. He was sensational. Everyone was thinking, oh, okay, if he can just do this job here and get us to the corners against the Storm, we might be able to achieve a grand final here. But then obviously the loss to the Melbourne Storm, who played probably one of the best second halves of football I think I've ever seen. That was a remarkable game by the Melbourne Storm, 48 points to 18 in the end. So obviously bowed out, unfortunately, but that sort of came with that stigma all year about the whole they can't really beat not just the top 4 teams, but not really the top 8 teams as well. Like there was just that horrible record that seemed to hang with you guys all year. And every time like a top 8 team or a top 4 team came up, it was spoken about by the media all week. Like the players were getting over it. They were getting frustrated. They'd get to the game. You're like, all right, this could be the one that they'll beat them now. And it still didn't happen. It must have been quite frustrating towards the end, Jesse, as a fan, going through that sort of period, knowing, oh, we're a good team here. We've got superstars all over the field. We just can't beat these top teams.
I wouldn't call it top 4 or top 8. I'd call it the top 2. I just think Melbourne and Penrith just had our number, and they have had for years. I've honestly, going into every other game with every other team, I'm like, Roosters will win this. And I just have that sort of air of confidence about it. And I'll be looking at my scores and everything else, and I'll just be like in the background, the Roosters will win this. But then every time it's Melbourne or bloody Penrith, I'm like, oh, God, this is just going to be one of those games again, isn't it? And I think I can't remember the record off the top of my head, but something in the last however many 13 or 14 games or something against Melbourne, we haven't won. And it's just, I could take a win from Penrith here and there, but it's just Melbourne. Like, it's just something about them. They just can't get it done. So it is frustrating because you just think, what is it about this that you just can't seem to get over everything else? Like, you're flying, your form's there, the players are doing well. There's no reason for it. Like defensively, even before that game too, I think they'd won maybe the last 6, 7 in a row, like around there. Like they weren't losing. To then just come into it, and then it seems like the systems just fall apart, and they just pick them apart, and they just go, no, you're not going to be able to answer this, and it happens too often.
Even when they were in their prime, so they beat Parramatta, they beat St. George, they beat the Tigers. I know these aren't the biggest names around, but they beat these sides, beat these sides coming in, and they played Melbourne in Melbourne. You thought, okay, well, this will be a clash for the ages here. We'll really see where they're at. And they lost 24-8, and they were never in it. Like from the opening minutes, they were never in it. And you're like, wow, there is a gap here. There shouldn't be a bigger gap between second and third, but it really is a drop. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but that drop is going to get even bigger in 2025. So they've got some things to work out, and I think it will have to be with a new vision, a new style, and I would like to think an old style of steely defense has to be their new modus operandi.
Has to be.
I feel like we will talk about it with the change of personnel. There has to be a sort of a change up in terms of playing style that just has to happen. It feels like you might be. I want to talk about some of the players for the good and the bad. But before I do that, I want to ask you both a question. Trent Robinson, I want to know for you as fans, where is that pressure gauge sitting at the moment? Because obviously he's had the back-to-back premierships. That's now, 5 years now it's been since that sort of happened. And in a way, I feel like it's been some underachieving years. I know, like, you look at it on face value, then you peel back, there's some layers with injuries and stuff, which hasn't really helped. But there's been a couple of sort of achieving years thrown in, like as of the last few years. Tommy, where are you sitting at the moment with the Trent Robinson pressure gauge meter?
I'm fine. For two reasons. One, I think Trent's proved himself, and it's more than just winning. Like when you can sit down with someone like Brandon Smith, who seemed was over the line with the Dolphins, and in a one-meal conversation, turn him around to say, "I want to win a premiership in that jersey." That's special. That's a talent. Like not people can't do that. So for him to be able to do that kind of stuff is pretty amazing. And he's a smart man. So you're getting more than just football out of him. You're getting lifestyle. And that's why, brown paper bags aside, people want to stay at the Roosters for a long period of time. The other thing is, who's better? Who are
Exactly.
you going to get? I mean, no offense, but we're not chasing Brad Arthur. There's only one Wayne Bennett, and Craig Bellamy's never leaving Melbourne. So, like, unless we hand it to a rookie, that's it. So you just don't do that. Like, and the Roosters don't do that. So it's a bit of a moot point, really. I don't think you will see anything happen there for quite a while.
Jesse, you sit in the same side.
Pretty much, man. Yeah, definitely. I just think, why would they put themselves in a position when they've had such solidarity with the club for so long? You know what I mean? They know what they've got. There isn't an excess of managers out there at the moment, looking for jobs, especially not better than him. So
Eric Ten Hag is, so you might take him, change code.
absolutely not. It's an end of an era.
Didn't I just see an article before that Graham Arnold, who used to be the Socceroos coach, he wants to coach an NRL side now.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
There you go,
God.
So
boys.
anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Michael Checker, he was one to have a go too, so anyone can have a crack.
Why not?
Yeah.
Throw it all in. Yeah, no, it's a funny one, but I want to throw a few players out there and let's have a bit of a chat about their years. Spoke about Sam Walker a bit already. Let's just quickly pinpoint Sam Walker, and I thought he was incredible this year. Very unfortunate about the injury because I thought he was really at that time ready to take on that comp and get to that next level and lead the team to a genuine fight until that at the premiership this year. I thought there would have been a real pain in the backsides for both the Storm and Penrith if they were able to verse them with Sam Walker with the way he was playing. I continue to say over the last, I feel like 2 years, the Roosters have looked the best possible version of themselves whenever they've given the keys to Sam Walker. It feels like there's been some hesitation there for a 12-month sort of period where this year, whether maybe Cooper Cronk's taken a bit more of a backward step, we know that was a bit public now with how his sort of relationship may have been a little bit tricky at times with those two, but it looks like this year they've just embraced Sam Walker as a player, embraced what he's about and how he plays, and gone, go, take over. We know Kiri's going, go. This team is yours now. Go ahead. Tom, what do you think of Sam Walker's season?
Yeah, good. And there were some improvements that weren't just in the flash and flare because he's getting bigger and stronger. Had some good defensive moments too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Luke Keary really got kind of found out defensively as the year went on. That didn't really seem to happen as much to Sam Walker. He got tested and he held up. The one thing I think, well, two things that can really be put in the bank for him for next year. So, ACL injuries, long recoveries, lonely recoveries. But if you can just build that kind of steely fortitude, that will serve you well. And also, less running on your legs means more time to build size. And if he can do that, you remember what Nathan Cleary looked like when he came in the comp. This pimply faced little skinny kid, and now he's pretty solid. So that could be Sam Walker as soon as 2025. That could be his real chance to add another facet to his game.
Yeah, Jesse, anything further to add with the Walker side of it?
No, I love him. Honestly, I think he's fantastic. I think the Roosters will be a better team when they give him more reins to play, and I think that's kind of what they do. It's very hard to sort of tame a player like that. You can't coach him to the ground and make him play by a book. I think the whole benefit of him and the whole reason you really want to give him the keys is because he's just dynamic. He can just pull something out of nowhere, and he showed that so many times. How many times you see him go all of a sudden the ball's just gone over someone's head and he's just caught it on the other end? It's like, who does that? Especially who's got the confidence to do that out of nothing, especially a player of his age, and I think this season, he showed a lot of maturity about his game for such a young player. It's like he's been playing it forever. So it's really good. And I think, 2 or 3 more years of that, a bit more size, and like you're talking one of the best halves in the comp potentially. So I just hope they keep him. That's the big thing.
I think he's already up there, so it'd be great to see him with that, add a little bit more size, confidence, and hopefully, as we've seen some players in the past, his knee injury doesn't knock him around too much and he can come back and just continue to be the player that we know he can be and continue on that path. Another player who was absolutely sensational, and I want to start this by saying he had a lot of knockers last year. I think Jesse already mentioned this earlier in the episode, but James Tedesco, there was people out there saying retire sort of thing at the end of last year, which I thought was crazy. You do not knock a champion like that. But goodness me, he came back and shut everyone up this year. It was such a good season. 1 point off of Dally M, which was sensation. In a year that I know Jerome Hughes was so good, but But I kept saying to everyone, we actually had our League of Inches Player of the Year award, and it was a split between both of them. That's how good James Tedesco, in my opinion, ended up being. And that was just literally using the same 3-2-1 system as the Dally M's, and we ended up getting it. So it was even, but James Tedesco was absolutely sensational. Jesse, let you take it away with Tedesco's year.
Yeah, that's it, man. Exceptional. I think he had a lot to prove this year, and he did it. Obviously, the exclusion of Origin kind of gave him the opportunity to focus himself more into the club. You know what I mean? Like he's not having to worry about splitting things and duties in the middle and stuff. But yeah, like far out, man. He turned the clock back massively, and I think that's the sort of Tedesco that we'll see until he's basically retired. Honestly, I don't really see him slowing down. I think he's tuned his game into sort of knowing what his body's like more, his age and everything as well. But he hasn't lost anything. He's sort of just adapting in another way, and it seems like he hasn't missed a step. And this year was just so good to see. It's a shame he didn't get the Dally M, but you know you can't really argue about it because Hughes just had this exceptional year, and you just go, well, I'm sorry, you were incredible, but there was one guy that was just a little bit better overall, and he won more, unfortunately for us. So, he's a champ. He's a champion. There's no talks about him retiring and stepping aside, and you know he's lost it and he's a has been. It's just ridiculous, just straight up ridiculous. So, I don't expect him to get any of those sort of like Origin things finished for him now. Edwards was too good. I think as well, a lot of that uncertainty going into it too might have been playing on him, and even just the club in general, because the selections were there. They've obviously got Origin players in that side already. There's Collins, you got Crichton, there's a few in the back. So, and then there was all this uncertainty. Is Teddy going to get selected? Is he not? And I thought for sure he was. That's why I bought Edwards in Supercoach a couple of weeks before Origin. So I was like, no, I'm committing. This is going to happen. And then, yeah, obviously Teddy wasn't there. And I think going into next season, he's going to know he's not there. And that whole period, it's like, well, this is incredible. You know, we might have another fantastic stretch there with him in there. And I think those extra games too are probably going to help another cause. And if he can pull another season out like he's just had, like, is there another chance that he gets close to another Dalium? I'd love to see it happen. So,
especially with a few more stars not there next year, so not as much point
sharing
will be happening on a week to it, and there'll be no Sam Walker for a lot of that time either, who normally polls quite a few points. So you feel like if they are to win some games next year, it'll be off the back of a James Tedesco sort of masterclass week in, week out. You mentioned like in game one, he obviously did play Origin, but I don't think he was the reason why the Blues lost it all. I think he was actually pretty solid in that game. So it just shows you he was still at that level. He's still for mine a rep quality sort of player, and I would not have been opposed if Edwards wasn't playing the last couple of games here for the Kangaroos. If it was James Tedesco, I think he still deserved it from the season he had. Tom, having him as your captain, it just must be, you must be super proud to have that bloke and to see how he has bounced back this year.
Well, you'll never finish a game and say, why didn't Tedesco put in? Yeah, he always puts in. His flaw is he puts in too much. And that will probably be, a question mark for next year if things are falling down around him. Is he going to try and carry the team in typical Tedesco fashion, or other people around him going to have to stand up? And they will. Rare is the team, though, who would not switch their fullback for James Tedesco. There might be Manly and Tom Trbojevic and a few others who wouldn't swap. Every other club would swap their current fullback for James Tedesco. So there are people who are saying ridiculous things like he should retire. We're also the same ones saying Kalen Ponga should retire. And then he almost won Dally M himself. So yeah, it's ludicrous. But like he is a guy that people love playing with on the same team. From a pure marketing point of view, like he still brings in the most amount of eyeballs to the Roosters out of anyone. He's the guy who will pop up on your ads and stuff like that. So there's no reason the Roosters would let him go. There is a rumor floating around at the moment that Pappenhausen is on the radar for the Roosters, although I think he'd be better suited to Parramatta, to your guys. But Roosters don't miss. So I can't see it happening, but there has been talk for a while. Will Tedesco move to 5'8"? He's not that kind of guy for me. I mean, ever since the Darren Lockyer experiment, everyone thinks they can do it, and they just can't. But I don't know. If Pappenhausen comes along, do you start shifting things? I mean, they didn't do it for Suoli'i. They didn't do it for Joey Manu. Will they do it for him, though? I don't know.
I've still heard some whispers around Ponga in a couple of years' time. Doesn't go away around the Roosters. And always a little bit of, it feels like there's this love-making sort of bit where we've always got our eye on Kalen Ponga. And Just when the right time is, that they will strike and get their man. Probably when Tedesco ends up hanging up the boots or moving on and having a year or two in Super League or whatever he ends up choosing. He's a legend of the game. He can choose the way he departs, I feel like.
Big shoes to fill.
I too have heard rumors about Kalen Ponga, and they involve a future team coming into the competition.
Oh, look out. We won't go too far into that one. Very, very interesting. Watch this space. I feel like one more guy I just want to say, when I talk about this guy, I don't want to get too deep about it, but honestly, what he has come back from and to have the season he's had this year, he's probably been the best forward in the competition, in my opinion, not just back rower, but best forward. Angus Crichton was absolutely sensational. And to think he was almost lost to the game around this time last year in a way, and just we didn't know if we were ever going to see him again or if we were ever going to just see him pull on a rugby league jersey or like it got to that sort of, and he's openly spoken about it now. So it's out there in the public. And please, if you haven't, go back and watch his interview where he does talk about this all openly. It's when you watch it now, even more so, it's just mind boggling that he went through all that and now he's the sort of player that he is now. And this is no kidding, but he was honestly carrying teams, like not the Roosters on his back, but carrying opposition teams who were trying to like pull him down. Like he'd have 3, 4, 5 players. He'd be still scoring. It got to the point where teams knew what he was doing on a week-to-week basis, still score a try or two. Like, what a year, Tom. Like, he was absolutely monstrous.
I mean, it pains to say because he kind of shoved it up our club, but, to start off the year and to start from reserve grade, and then, they go after Dave Fafita and don't go after Crichton, obviously. So that all blows up in their face. But he has the fortitude to just back himself and say, I'm sticking with it no matter what. Like he got the last laugh and he deserved it. Everything he got is worked hard for and deserved. I don't understand what that's like, what he's gone through and to live that. I just don't know. And I don't know how that works and all those bits and pieces. But he's won. He's conquered. He's come out the other side. And, Daly Cherry-Evans picked on the wrong guy in State of Origin Game 3 to square up against. That was a bad move. And he stuck with it to his detriment. Like he was a bad man by the end of that year, Angus Crichton. They couldn't put him down. And he just looked strong, like in every way. So I hope he does that again next year, both for the Roosters' sake and for his sake personally.
He's got Hulk vibes, doesn't he, Jesse? He's just, it's incredible.
It was when he shaved his head. That was it. The new Crichton come out. It's like, this guy's a freak. What is he? What is he having for breakfast, man? It's just nuts. Look, the turnaround from where he was basically lost, personally too, is like when it was a personal battle to a year and a half later, he's the best forward in the comp again, because he was too. Like, you can't forget how good Angus Crichton was before everything sort of went south for him. And at the Rabbits, he was a weapon. At the Roosters, solid. Like he hadn't gotten there yet, and then he was always kind of right on the edge of it, and then just personal battles come in, and I'm just thankful, obviously, for him and his own sake that everything kind of worked out well, but it didn't just work out well. It's like it worked out about as good as it could possibly get for anyone in the game. Like it's just the best possible thing. And obviously the whole David Fafita thing, when that was all going down, I thought we could have two of the most damaging second rowers in the game, but it didn't seem like they were going to be both there together if that was the case. And it was who would you prefer, Fafita or Crichton? And it's like, well, Angus Crichton, obviously. Like, look at him after the season. And I suppose it's you can always look at the two together and go, they've both got their pros. But I think this season alone, you just look at what Angus Crichton's done at every possible level and just think there's no one like this dude right now in this current day and age in this form. He's the best. Easily the best. And just weapon to see, and no one could stop him. You see 4, 5, 6 people hanging off him, and he's still got the drive, and he still offloads. It's like no matter what you do, like you have to tape his hands down because he's always going to get that ball away. Gun, man, absolute gun.
Unbelievable year, and it's just so good to see him back, and not just back in the game, but just back personally. Like that's the most important part of this. Nothing to do with footy, him personally, and it's great to see him kicking goals off the field. I want to play a quick little game with you boys. I've written a couple of players down who, when I think about their season, I can't put down whether they've had a good year, a bad year. a bit indifferent. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of players here, and just let me know from your point of view what sort of season they had. Little spill. First one, Joseph Suaalii. I will throw to you, Jesse, first. Let me know what your thoughts on Suaalii's season was.
I've always been a bit hot and cold on Suaalii, like forever since he's signed for the club. I just thought he was all this hype around him, and I never really thought he'd sort of made up for it. The Origin selection was, I would say, more favoritism than form out of anything else. From Madge for Suaalii. But I think like the suspension happened and he come back from it. But I think when he come back, he was a gun. I think he really played well and like he had his moments where he was really, really good. And I thought, it's a shame. It's a shame he's gone now because like there has been glimpses this year. And there's probably other supporters will say, he's been really good since he's been there and every game that he's played and they just love him. But I just never saw it. And he never really caught my attention. I always thought he was a little bit underwhelming, if anything. And this year, I finally was like, oh man, like if there was one more season out of him, I think we could have got the best. But bit of a shame he's obviously going. I think they didn't really utilize him properly anyway to really give him the platform to be better than he was. I think Tom said it, he was better winger than anything else, and they really just didn't sort of go that way with him. But who are they going to put over him? They got Tupou and Young this year. Like Suaalii's not taking over them. There was every chance he could if he'd hung about, but rugby calls. So I wouldn't say great season. I wouldn't say poor season. I'd say it was just quite average, but he just had moments. Like he had really nice moments of playing good, and then other ones of just sort of plugging away, but gone too soon.
Tom, Suaalii's season, thoughts?
Yep, I agree. Better winger. Coming into the season, because remember last year, Billy Smith for the Roosters in centre was phenomenal.
Yes.
And
Yes,
coming
sir.
into the year before that injury, my best team was Suaalii wing, Billy Smith centre, and you had to pick between Tupou and Dom Young. Now, they were never going to pick because they just spent all this money on Dom Young. But I think that would have been the Roosters' best squad. And so, Suaalii's at his best because he's just destructive and he's just big body contact and he's strong. He's not as nuggety as Brian Toll, but he's just got that old school Carmichael Hunt just charge at him thing. And I think putting him in center takes that away, probably increases his longevity in the game, but that's longevity that's going to be played out with the ARU, which I'm not interested in. So, yeah,
Put it
it's
to the sword now.
yeah. I mean, who knows? I reckon within 5 years he'll be back in rugby league, and where he lands there remains to be seen. I'd agree. You'd still give him 6 or 7 out of 10, but you were kind of hoping for a 9 or a 10.
Yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Tom. Lindsay Collins. What did you think of Lindsay, or what did you make of Lindsay Collins' season?
I'd say once again, probably around about that 6 and 7 mark. Had some good moments. Great in Origin, but just never was quite there when you needed him to be at that just upper. I mean, he got his head taken off against Melbourne, so I mean, what are you supposed to do there? But yeah, he probably just never put his stamp on Jared's going and I'm your main man that I would have liked. That's probably the best way to sum up Lindsay.
Yeah, coming off last 2023's form as well, it was sort of felt like a little bit of a step back because I felt like he almost got to that, I'm that sort of elite style front row, and he was playing long minutes in 2023. I remember that much as well. Jesse, your thoughts?
Yeah. I think, you've really got to look at the 23 season against this one and think it was poor by that standard. Not poor by the overall league standard of props in general. I think he was better than most of just the average ones are getting about, but I just didn't think he did anything exceptional this year. It was a bit underwhelming. He had every opportunity, and I think it's one of those ones where it's like he knows he's going to be starting next year. I don't think there's any risk about him, getting put to the bench. I don't think that position's ever going to be there for him. I think he's always going to be the starting prop, but just didn't light up anything on fire. Just did a shift and played less minutes a little bit anyway, but it was still 50 plus most of the time. Just underwhelming overall compared to the 23 year, which was standout. So, hard to look back on that one, but
Last one before we speak about this long list of departures, which obviously is just one of the big major talking points, I guess, out of the club this year. Joey Manu. And I'll start off by saying I think what Tom mentioned a bit earlier, you just were waiting on those moments to hit him this year. And it just felt like it was one of the first years where Joey Manu didn't really have moments. Like it was just an odd year. I know he had a sort of few things went injury wise and stuff, and didn't had to again play a couple of multiple positions throughout the year to cover for sort of different personnel. But it just, I don't know. Again, I would not say it was a poor year by any means. It just was felt you feeling a bit meh in a way. Like you look back and go, oh, Manu's season was a little bit meh. Jesse, what are your thoughts?
I think Manu started the year pretty well, and I think he was pretty good up until round 12, 13, for whatever reason, he just fell off. And it was just
This is what got
quite
him on
mediocre.
Supercoach.
Exactly right. It was super mediocre. The same week we got him was the worst. That was it.
Yeah.
From that point for the rest of the year, nothing. Just average crickets and, 6 out of 10s most of the time. And I don't really know what you could put it down to be honest. I think he had, little moments of Joey Manu that we all expect. He might stand out. There'll be a sparkle in his eye for a certain play, and that's kind of the highlight reel of Joey Manu, really. Like he can just sort of, chip away, do nothing, blow the world up, and then go do nothing again. And it's just like, holy crap, Joey Manu just did that. It's like, that's kind of what you see. That's what you remember. But there's not a lot of it. Well, there wasn't a lot of it this year that I can remember anyway. So didn't get those opportunities at fullback, which kind of make him sort of stand out. And I think he gets a lot of confidence from that too, because he does well playing fullback, because obviously Teddy was there for most of that period and didn't have any opportunities really in the 5'8" spot. So he does have that. He does gets about, you know what I mean? And he sort of showcases himself a little bit, and it's good for him. It's good to watch. I think it's good for the club too. He's just showing like, give Joey Manu any position ever and he'll kill it. But he didn't really get that. And the old glue hands Manu thing, I suppose that was sort of like, that was squashed a little bit because he had Dom Young outside of him. So that combination was really nice. And I think Dom Young, obviously, without someone like that, you'd expect Joey Manu to kind of do a bit more and get a bit more of those tries and everything else. So maybe, the try numbers were down, but the assists weren't down at all. Like they were there and the combination was fantastic. So for that little combo, I think, yeah, he did really good. But on an individual point, there wasn't a great deal coming out of Joey Manu.
Are we being harsh, Tom, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I've got a question for Jesse. You're the stats man. You said like the try assists and stuff went down. Were the tackle breaks down?
No, like his game was solid.
Hmm.
The game that Joey Manu has and what he had done, I have to check to see obviously where it was from this and that. But like you watch him and you think he's just doing Joey Manu things all the time. And you can go into the game and you think, oh, he's going to do the same thing most of the time. But then I don't know, like for whatever reason, you just saw there was a lull. There was quite a pretty obvious lull towards the back half of the year. And, especially when it comes to the stats, like the stats translate very well in Supercoach. So they're very evident. And it does help too, because if I'm not watching or I'm not paying so much attention, I can see, okay, he hasn't done these things that he normally does. And he'll have these games 100 plus points, and then he'll have these 40s. And you're like, well, there's no bins, there's no errors, there's very few missed tackles. He's just not doing anything. He's just not being there. Or he could just be the guy that just makes the pass. So he's just he's in the middle. And I think that was what it was, is because he had a lot more and the team had a lot more talent left to right. And maybe that's what it was. But yeah, I wasn't laser focused in on him the whole year.
I seem to remember the last couple of years coming into finals, everything's humming for the Roosters, and then Joey Manu gets an injury a week or two out, either in finals or just before finals. And we all go, what could have been if Joey Manu was there? Well, he was there this year, and it just, like I said, he played well. He just didn't go into sixth gear. He just didn't go into that special moments when you don't know what to do when you give him the ball and things happen, and they just didn't really happen. Jack Howarth had his number in that game against Melbourne. He just figured him out. And sometimes you get those players who just have your number and there's nothing you can do. I would have him back in a heartbeat, and I think a lot of Roosters fans are hoping that he comes back halfway through the year, although the rumor is he might go off to France after he's finished in Japan. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it was, if it was a mental thing, if it was a physical thing. Is he just getting that little bit older and that little half a step of speed isn't there anymore? But I would have him back tomorrow.
And maybe that's a credit to him as a player as well, because maybe our expectations are a bit too high than it should be for a Joey Manu. And that just shows the quality of the player he was. Maybe for a lesser-known player who had that sort of a year this year that Manu had, we'd be raving about him, going, oh, what a great year by them. But just because it's Joey Manu, and we're so used to those special moments and what he can do, not to have sort of as many or if any of those this year was just a bit of a, okay. It made us sort of look at that a bit more and recognize what was happening. So let's talk about the departures. But before that, Tom reminded me about, and I can't believe I forgot to write this down, but this David Fafita situation, I forgot about this. So he signed up with the club apparently, and then backflipped with the within a lot of time space, had a chat to Tino by all reports and convinced each other to stay and keep going on this course of getting the grand final win for the Titans. First time I've ever seen the Roosters and obviously Uncle Nick not get their man. It was such a very weird time. Just, I don't know. And the funniest part of the whole thing was they didn't want to give Crichton that kind of money, where Crichton, for mine, was absolutely killing the season compared to David Fafita. Obviously, David Fafita can be a game breaker, but I don't think he's ever produced the consistency that Angus Crichton has shown this year. So it was just, the whole thing was weird. And then Angus was annoyed for 2 weeks. It's got a bit, hang on, I'm better than David. It was just such an odd situation, Tom. I still can't get my head around it. It was weird.
And it was one of those ones where it was like, who broke up with who? Because the story was that he backflipped, and then there was another story that as soon as he started to question, I don't know if I've made the right decision, that the Roosters just pulled the contract out of his hand and said, well, that's it. I never thought it was a good fit culture-wise. I didn't see how a guy like that fitted in at the Roosters. So I'm kind of glad that didn't go ahead. And also, of course, his girlfriend, that Shaylee Brent, I think is how you say her name. She's played for Titans as well. Yeah. So, of course, that would have been a factor in staying. I think we got the best result for both parties. The Titans are better off with him and we're better off with Crichton. But, yeah, it was a weird circumstance. But David Fafita's played that game before, don't forget. That was the whole going to the Broncos or not going to the Broncos. So that might just be his personality.
I think you avoided a circus, Jesse, in a way. I think you've ended up with the better part of that outcome, in my opinion. Keeping Angus, great work.
Definitely. I think so. I think at the end of the day, who really says no to the Roosters? So I guess the Roosters said no to him, so they could kind of have one over him.
Add it to the folklore book that we're going to get. It's going to have. We're going to have to make sure this happens. Add it to the folklore book, because I feel like we have to with the departure. So we've got Suoliti, Manu, Jerry Hargraves, Tupanua, Kiri, Jennings is gone. I think you mentioned Dylan Napa was gone. Obviously not playing there. I may have missed someone. The list is that long. I may have missed someone, but that's off the memory of what I've got jotted down here. So it's that's not just a lot of players, but that's some players that have been crucial to the club's identity in for a number of years now. We mentioned it right at the start, pretty much, of this episode. Things are going to change, and whether they like it or not, things have to change, because you can't replace majority of those players. It's just impossible to replace one or two of those, let alone 4 or 5 or 6 of those players. Tom, it's a weird time for the club in terms of this is just a completely different sort of vibe we'll get next year.
Yeah, I'm thinking back, we haven't seen this much changeover and uncertainty since probably the start of 2005 and the retirement of Brad Fittler. That's how monumentous a moment this is for the Roosters. And of that list, there's some really great players. I'm sad to see Sitili Tupanua go. I really like him. He's not that big, but he is tough and he is strong and he will do whatever you tell him to do at 100 miles an hour. What we need to see next year is the rise of Siwa Wong. Yes. Or Siwa Wong. And he can be that guy and more. And I don't want to put this on him at all. I hope he beats, is that person, but I just don't want to see that next generation talent fizzle out. And remember when everyone used to talk about Anthony Cherrington, and he was the next big thing, and he was that generation, and he copped a few injuries, and it just never happened for him, unfortunately. So I hope that doesn't happen to Siwa Wong. And there's a few other guys, Nat Butcher's just out there still doing the damn thing, and Ethan Butcher didn't get much of a crack this year either. So they've got second row stocks, just nuggety, tough guys coming through. That's not a problem for them. It will be when you're 18 points down in 15 minutes and you didn't think the game was going to go like this, who's the voice you listen to that pulls you out of it? And who's the one who gets beside Teddy and says, don't do it on your own, because Jared's not there and Luke's not there. So who's going to be that guy? My guess is it has to be someone like Angus Crichton.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's got to be Jesse.
Yeah, well, like I just had a quick look and I was like, okay, let's look at the combination of games, like combined number of games that these departures have left. 1,313. Just in the 7 you mentioned.
And
That's
a
a
third
lot
of that
games.
belongs to one player.
Exactly
Jared.
right. Yeah, 100%, man. 307. Like it's huge, and that's you can't replace that no matter what you do. So, big void to fill, and it's not just one. There's probably 4 out of that core group that you're losing, and that's detrimental, man. That's worrying. That's definitely worrying signs because, like, okay, they've got the stocks, especially in the forward pack, and we knew that going into last season. We thought, oh, who's even going to start? This is going to be like forward roulette for most of the year because until they nail something down, we really don't know. The stocks in the back are really thin, and I don't really know what they're going to do quite yet. They've
We
got
had
that.
Michael Jennings running around for us, and that showed us where we were at, didn't it? Really,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Mark,
I mean, he did well for
Michael
an almost
Jennings,
40-year-old bloke. He did well.
299 games for him
Mm.
overall. It's like that's experience that it's gone, and he only plugged a hole for a while. They've got Marky Mark coming through now, so I still can't say his last name, but I'm keen to see where that goes. There you go.
Is that you, Blocker?
Well, yeah.
Honestly,
like,
I don't want to
some,
help
but-
you guys out anymore, but I've got everything crossed that Billy Smith can get through a season of rugby league because
God.
honestly, I rate him so highly. I think if he can go through a season, he goes straight into a top 5 center in this game. I think he's that good, and he could be a huge difference to you guys next year. I know Manu, Suoli are huge losses for that spark factor, but Billy Smith, we started to see glimpses of it while he pulled a few games. I think it was the start of this year. He's so good. I just can't wait to see him, hopefully, fingers crossed, get through that year. And I think Jared is obviously the huge loss here because in a way, he has been the bodyguard of this club, this team for so long now. Anytime like a big game's happening, he feels like the guy that's going, get behind me. I'll lead us here. And some people might not agree or like the way he goes about it, but it works for the Roosters. It gets them on the back of him. And that's the thing. It works. So it'll be interesting to see next year. Like Spencer's obviously a similar style of player, but doesn't have that aura built up yet with him, especially at the Roosters. So just be interesting to see which forward does take that leader sort of mentality. Like Collins obviously is the first one that comes to mind, but again, he doesn't have that aura that Jared Reed-Hargraves had, and no one will ever have that aura, unfortunately. Like that was just him. He's a special, special player, and I think we'll see that the loss of Jared really hurt the club, especially early on next year.
That's why I'm very confused about this Terrell Mays situation.
Yeah,
because
perfect segue.
That's not a good culture. It's not a good culture move, in my opinion. Because remember a little while ago there was the talk about all the Mays wanted to play together, and they were all going to end up at Penrith or somewhere, and Terrell wouldn't go, and he wouldn't go. And he really stood up for them this year, and he's that new generation of the young kids. So he got the rap tail, and he likes the rap music and all this kind of stuff that Jared and some of the other boys maybe not have done, but he seemed to get it, and he was in line for possible New South Wales call-ups. Things were going really good for him. So that is a really surprising call to, after just resigning him for 2 years, to say, "Oh, you're free to go." And I know my man from the United Bar, he is scared that they're after Leo Thompson from Newcastle. And so that could be an option for them, and that may go well, but I just don't understand that play. So there must be something going on. There's things happening in the shadows. Ben Hunt coming to them. Everyone's got Ben Hunt at the moment coming to them. Is that what's going on? It's not.
I wouldn't
It wasn't even on that much money, $450.
Yeah. I wouldn't have got rid of May to sign Thompson. That's for sure. Like And it's a weird time for the Knights because Knights have just announced the signing of his brother as well, Thompson. So felt like they wanted to have like a brother reunion there, but
I wonder how that plays out at the Christmas table. Like who's jealous or who's glad to be out of there. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, Jesse, we mentioned this on our weekly podcast that will be out by the time that people have listened to this podcast as well. But just quickly, for those that didn't get a chance to listen to that, your thoughts around the May rumours?
Yeah, it's gutting. I think I think May sort of, projected himself this year. I think, Jesus, there was so many games where Trent was just like, well, he was playing good and there was no reason to take him off. And then before you know it, he's played the full 80.
Yeah.
That's like, man, how many times did he do that? He did it, what was it, the Vegas game? I think he played
a
monster
few
minutes.
times
I
around
think
Origin as well.
Origin too, obviously. All those Origin games, he freaking destroyed it. And 70, 80 minutes wasn't hard for him to do. He kind of just walks through an entire game. And who can do that? Like, who can you go to in the game that can play a full 80 minutes hard? Not just, just doing little bits here and there. It was full throttle for 80 minutes.
Yeah, we're talking Payne Haas territory.
Yeah, like this is top tier. Like you don't want to let someone like this go. Not after they've just re-signed for a couple of years, but in the current stocks of the club. Like you're just another player you're letting go for no particular reason when you just have lost Warrior Hargraves. Like I something's happened. Something has to happen. Has to have happened at the club, and I don't know what it is, and I hope we
In
find
your
out.
opinion, please
In my
cover
opinion,
that.
Just
of
coming
course
to the
it's my
Roosters.
opinion. Of course it's my opinion. We don't know anything yet. That's the thing that's a bit weird. And it's like, why has this suddenly come out that he's immediately effective immediately? Like, I'd like a bit more clarity around this, please. I don't really want that to happen at all.
Not another off-season story, please.
No.
Joel, do you get discounts on printing names and numbers on Peter Wynn's score so I can get Mitch Moses on the back of my next Roosters jersey for 2025?
Mate, I'm gonna mute you in a minute. I don't need to stop that. It's been a hard day for me as a Para fan, and obviously the king himself. It's just still getting the turn today. If I lose Moses as well in the same little space, I don't know how I'll be able to do it. I'll be the laughing stock of all the NRL community, I reckon. Quick couple of rapid fire questions so we can let Tom get out of here. We've already taken way too much of his time, so I appreciate it. Key moment of the year. Let Tom take us off here this one.
Key Roosters moment of the year?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, it was the ACL injury of Sam Walker. It's not the nice moment of the year, but that is the defining moment of the year. And the other one, even apart from that, was another negative, was their performances against Melbourne. Just showed where they're at. But their shining light, of course, is the rise and rise of Angus Crichton.
Jesse?
The rise of Angus Crichton and the resurgence of Tedesco, I suppose. Getting Tedesco throughout the Origin period is really nice. It's never really happened as far as I can remember, going far back. But there was positives, man. There was a lot of positives. The club was good. Like they played well. It's sad to see so many players go, but key moments, it's very hard to lock one down. Like, you can talk about the massive blowouts they had. It's hard. Key moment, Angus Crichton. Angus Crichton, I think for whatever Angus Crichton has done this year as a whole moment of this entire 2024 gone, it's the best thing that's happened to that forward pack in a long time, I think. I just don't think they've had anyone as damaging as him that I can remember. It's that to that level. And I just hope he continues. And just good to have him back.
I would lock in, obviously, the Sam Walker ACL injury, which I thought at a time of the year where it felt like they were just building to beat one of those top two teams and really looked like the momentum was coming their way, and it just sort of unfortunately didn't. A little bit of the positive side of it, I just wanted to point out as well, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, that Dogs loss early on where you were down, I think, two players for like half that game or something, and came back and almost got him. I think that was the start of a little bit of a run of form as well, where it was a win and loss sort of pattern that was happening early on, and then came across and almost beat a Dog side that was playing some decent footy at the time. And that was a pretty good moment as well. Surprise packet of the year. Jesse, you can go first for this one.
Surprise packet of the year. Sandon Smith. very surprising, very good. Like, there's obviously other players that did quite well, but I just didn't expect him to be as complimenting to Sam Walker as he was, and it kind of caught me off guard because I thought, geez, I really like this combination. The Kiri Walker thing never really come out to me, and I just thought they kind of try and overplay each other, and it's just a bit disjointed, a bit janky here and there. But I just thought he was really good, and I want to see more of him next season. And I think the lineup selections, it never surprised me seeing Sandon Smith in the 14. And there was obviously excess of players. You can talk about all the players that the Roosters had in the books to put there, the forwards, the amount of forwards that they had, they weren't even using at all. And then you just put Sandon Smith in, this little guy. Same thing you could say with Connor Watson. I think between the two of them, they were incredible. They had just incredible years. And like, I always wanted that out of Connor Watson, but I never really had much expectation out of Sandon Smith. And I think going into this new year, I really hope he does as much as I hope he does, to be fair. Both between him and Watson, really good.
Yeah, I am actually going Connor Watson. I don't know. I'm probably a bad judge when it comes to looking at this, but I didn't really rate Connor Watson that highly. And this year, I'm like, honestly, rep player. Like, I wouldn't have looked at a place, in my opinion, in an Australian jersey at the end of this year. And for mine, deserved it over Ben Hunt, who I thought was not as good this year and probably would have suited that sort of 14 role a bit better. But yeah, Connor Watson for mine was sensational a year. And I know Brand Smith was a bit of a loss, but went into the hooker position and provided the goods. Obviously, didn't get to go the big one, but I just thought he had a really good year. Tom?
Yeah, basically the ones that have been said. The other one was Angus Crichton, like at the start of the year in reserve grade, sort of finished where he is. That was a surprise. But I mean, we've spoken about him at length. But yeah, I think Connor Watson for mine, the fact that he went from a guy who was there and thereabouts for the Roosters, off to Newcastle, didn't really go so well, back to the Roosters on near minimum wage, ACL injury, and is he going to fit in this squad? Is Sandon Smith just going to keep him out? And he forced his way into a Blues jersey. So he's got to be pretty proud of himself and played a lot of time at 13, which means that he also squished Victor Radley out of a 13 spot. Yeah. So that's not nothing either. So, yeah, I think he was good. And another one just from out there, and I hope he gets more game time, was the 4 White, if that's how you say his first name. He played for New Zealand the other day, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And
good as well.
If they're thinking that they don't need Terrell May, it must be because they're planning to rely on him, because he's a really hard guy to put down. And he, once again, spent a lot of time around that 13 that pushed Victor Radley out to an edge 2. So I would like to see more of him in 2025.
Who needs a big 2025? I feel a bit bad. I feel like this is unwarranted pressure, but I got Sandon Smith for mine because obviously the loss of Sam Walker to start the year. Luke Keary is obviously gone out of the club now as well. So I just think there needs to be that guy, and Sandon Smith's going to have to be it, especially at the start of the year for a majority of probably halfway through the year, the guy that steers the ship. So it's a lot of pressure coming into the year. It's a fresh year. The Roosters will always have hopes of playing finals football, so they won't settle for anything less. So it's going to be up to him. I know Chad Townsend will be there as a signing, but I feel like he knows the Roosters system now. He's been there for a while. And as you sort of said, Jesse, he has shown glimpses this year of being that really good player. And I mentioned it against Manly in that finals game. He got to that level of like, oh, wow, this guy can play. We've all heard the sort of reports of how good he could be. We've actually seen it in the flesh. So for mine, Sandon Smith, in a sort of different way, needs a big 2025. Tom?
Sandon Smith's 2025 has got a big question mark over it at the moment, does it not? With his accident thing.
Yes,
so
it does.
I don't know where that's at. I mean, I know of people, not personally as such, but who've been to prison for things like that. So I don't know as how bad that was and whatever. I hope that's not the case for anyone involved. But that's not so smooth sailing. So I'm not sure what his future holds. Chad Townsend might be a big Roosters guy real soon. Siwa Wong or Sia Wong is the one for me. Yep. This is the year where he becomes more than the talent and now the mainstay, and he cements a number 12 spot and is the Satili Tupanua replacement. Not sure, is he eligible to play for New South Wales? Played for Tonga, so he probably would be.
I think he is, yeah.
So he could be in the frame for those kind of things. I mean, don't forget, it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about Josh Schuster, being in the frame for New South Wales. So how quickly things can turn. Yeah, I think he could be that guy next year.
My super coach is screaming out for that. I made that
hope
mistake
so.
this year
Yeah.
and put him in my starting team from round 1, and that quickly became a quick trade out. Jesse, who is your surprise? Needs a big 2025.
I'm gonna say Lindsay Collins. Big void to fill, man. Big void to fill, and he's got it all made for it. I think he's got the talent for it. I think he's got the guts. I just don't think he's got that dog in him that we've lost, and I think Spencer does. So like the dog is going to be filled. Ooh, but the it's just the presence, man. It's a big body, and I think he can do it. Honestly, I really think he can do it. And I think they've got something solid there. But he just needs more than he's done this year. And if he doesn't do it, then there's going to be a hole there. He's not going to have anyone to rely on. He's not going to have Jedri Hedge to fall back to at the end of the day. So I'm going to say Collins.
And last one, I think it's out of 2 players for this one, but who is your player of the year for the Roosters, Tom?
Angus Crichton. Do you want an explanation?
Jesse?
Or yeah.
I think we've spoken enough of him. We already know why.
I'm going to go Teddy.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've got the split decision. Just from what he's come back from, Angus Crichton. Just from what he's come back from, like Teddy, absolute champion, and just never doubted him in a way. I just knew we spoke about it a number of times in the preseason, Jesse, from a super coach point of view, but we just sort of always had it in the back of our mind. He'll be back. He'll be back this year. Don't doubt him. You've given him fire, and he's going to go. So, Tom, Retro Rugba Leeg, thank you very much for jumping on board. I took way too much of your time. I apologize for that, but I really appreciate you jumping on, chatting all things about your beloved Roosters. And please, guys, go and give him some love if you haven't already over the social media side of things, and go and buy a few jerseys off him as well. Thank you for coming on.
No, not a problem. It hasn't been a burden on my time at all. I like doing these kind of things. I enjoy doing this. I don't have podcasts of my own, so I love jumping on other people's. And I think some of us boys up in Queensland have got to shape up and do a bit more like you guys in New South Wales do, a little bit more collaborative stuff. So I think it's a good thing to do.
Mate, I'm up in Queensland. I hope we can have a chat about. So we can.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I am. I'm a sort of edge of the Gold Coast. So and Jesse's down the south coast, sort of in New South Wales. So he'll have to just come up at one point. I'll get him to do that. But yeah, keen as to do something a bit more with you. That'd be awesome to do in the future. But that's it. Roosters, obviously, a good year overall. A good year that unfortunately got influenced by injuries. It just feels like there's a lot to come out of this club over the next month or two. There's something happening. There's some murky waters around. There's people swimming underneath that we can't see. And just keep an eye out. There's going to be something happening. So good luck for 2025. Thanks, both of you boys. Good luck to the Roosters in 2025.